we are just so honored to have some incredible youth from around the world who are here to talk to us about their activism and the amazing work they've done to advocate for racial justice in their communities. And I want to introduce Peter, our moderator this morning. Peter is joining us from Ghana, and he was a participant in the Changemaker Project last year. He and his team created, they renovated a sanitation facility at a market in Accra, Ghana, to bring running water so that market women could wash their hands and have better public health and public safety in his community. So his team actually won the People's Choice Award. They did an amazing job. And he's here today because he is actually an intern at the Changemaker Project, along with Emmy. Thanks for joining us, Emmy. Thanks so much for being here. And I'm going to let Peter take it away now. He's the moderator, so he's going to be introducing all of our amazing speakers. But before I switch over to him, let's have everybody turn their cameras on so we can see you. Only if you're comfortable, but it's always nice in this pandemic world to actually see people's faces and get to know each other. Peter's going to be asking the panelists some questions that he's prepared, and then he's going to be inviting the audience to offer some questions. So if you have a question, you can put it in the chat, and we'll hopefully be able to get to some of those questions towards the end. And then if we have time, we're actually going to be going into breakout rooms where your speakers are going to you're going to get some like sort of smaller intimate group time with your breakout, with one of your speakers. So you'll get to ask them your questions directly if we don't have time in a large group. All right, so without further ado, I want to introduce Peter. Take it away, Peter.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the introduction, Annalise. As she said, I was a participant at the Changemaker Project, and I enjoyed my time, and I love the organization that I decided to intern for them, and it's been amazing so far. And what's even more amazing tonight is the people that we're going to present on our panel. It was absolutely amazing reading about them, and I had a lot of fun setting the questions for them, because I really want to know more, and I think a lot of us want to know how these young people, these peers of mine, have found the motivation and the drive to do these amazing things so early in life. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce them one by one, starting from Miss Isabella Hansen. And she organized a competition last year called the Imata Art Competition. And she did this to help teens process the deaths of people like Breonna Taylor and Mr. George Floyd, among other people. And then she also had, she contributed to her community by performing a research with her, an organization that she's with, the National Youth Foundation, that led to a local property known as the Fossil House to be added to the Underground Railroad National Network of Freedom. And she received a grant from the Changemaker Project to help her with her project last year. If you could give us a wave, Miss Hansen.
Hi. Yeah, I created the. Okay, I guess I should just begin. So, I created the Imatter poetry contest because I use poetry as like a way to express myself every day. And last year during quarantine, I saw repeated footage of the killing of George Floyd on the news and just on social media. And I just used poetry really to just express how I felt. And I was thinking maybe kids, like other kids my age or just all around the country, also will like do use poetry. And I think a contest would motivate them to really talk about that. So I created the Imatter Poetry Project, and it gives students the chance to write about how, like, why Black Lives Matter. And then I combine the top 10 poetry entries into a book. And the Changemaker Project really helped me get this project like off the ground because I've been with them since the beginning, and it's really helped me.
Thank you so much, Miss Hansen. Next on the list is Miss Anya Dillard. She's 17 years old. She's an activist. She's a philanthropist, a filmmaker, a performing artist, and a social entrepreneur. She has a lot of things going on for her, and I'm really glad for that. She's also the founder of the Next Gen Come Up, which encourages the youth to fight against discrimination and also explore activism in their communities. She's best known for organizing the largest civil rights demonstration in her town's history, which had about 3,000 participants. That's really amazing, Ms. Dillard. And she also organized the town's first ever Juneteenth celebration, and she's been featured in Elle, 17, and Glamour magazine for her activism. So, if you would please unmute and tell us a bit about yourself, Miss Dillard.
Hi, thank you so much for introducing me. I'm so honored to be a part of such an awesome and inspiring panel. As Peter said, my name is Anya Dillard. I'm 17 years old and I'm from West Orange, New Jersey. I've been involved in activism since I was about 14 years old. And I've been working hard for the cause ever since. And I'm really passionate about spreading awareness through creativity and encouraging young people to utilize their talents, no matter, if it's artistic talents, academic talents, leadership talents, whatever it may be, to put forth their best foot forward and to give back and utilize their successes to give back to people who are not as represented and don't have the same platforms and resources that we all have. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for your awesome work to the community. Next on the list is another amazing person. She's in the person of Miss Katie Jain. She's an 18-year-old high school senior from Princeton, New Jersey, and she is the executive director of Redefine, a nonprofit which empowers students to fight discrimination in their communities. And she also believes in the fight for justice and advocacy in every way possible. Um, Her organization publishes articles and personal narratives on their websites. She's also the editor in chief of her high school newspaper, as well as an active participant in her school's MUN and mock trials groups. She also writes for a local newspaper and named the Montgomery News. And when she's not fooling her Netflix addiction, she can be found asleep with her dogs or listening to music. Thank you so much, Miss Katie, for joining us. If you would please tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Katie, and I guess I'll talk mostly about Redefine. So it's basically a nonprofit organization that is our primary purpose is empowering other people um, and uplifting voices of teenagers within their communities. So the main way we do this, I think, is through journalism. So we try to give students like the platform and the voice to share their narratives and share their ideas via articles, but then we also publish resources. We try to educate and spread awareness. And so we kind of have this uplift and empower as well as educate and spread kind of message to it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Miss Jane. We have Mr. Perez and Mr. Campbell on our list, but I don't know if they're on this call. Should I go ahead and introduce them too?
Yeah, why don't we wait and see if they join? Hopefully they'll join in. Have you heard from Victor yet?
I texted him. I just texted him again.
Okay, yeah, I emailed with Stefan this morning, so he said he was joining. I'm not sure. Hopefully he'll be here soon, and when he gets here, you can introduce him then probably.
Okay, perfect. I guess we can go ahead with the questions. Um, okay, so for Miss Hansen, my question is, what was your favorite piece of poetry or artistic piece in the Imata competition, and why do you like it so much?
Well, I mean, all of the poems were really nice, and I don't I don't really want to like rate them and everything, but um, I my favorite poem I think was "Hey Google" because it really talked about. I could read it if we have time. Okay, I'll read it. I This is a poem about how um, when you look up in Google, you can I'll just read it. Okay. And here's the art that goes with it. Hey Google, what's the Black National Anthem? Lift every voice and sing? We still have to sing because no one hears us. When singing turns to screams, are we still invisible? What do we do? Are we shadowed beneath that hand? Our problems get overlooked because we are the oppressed. But Black lives are equal to all lives, right? Hey Google, is it bad that I have to fight for my people? Hey Google, who is Breonna Taylor? Who is Ahmaud Arbery? Who is George Floyd? Hey Google, why are there so many names that I can't fit them all into one poem? Hey Google, why are Black children forced to grow up sooner? Hey Google, why do I have to be twice as better? Don't you know that I try my best and still get talked down on? Hey Google, why can't Black Lives Matter? So this was the winning poem called Hey Google by Cabria Fisher Dunbar, and I really enjoyed it.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. That was such a trip. That was really nice. Thank you so much. Okay, Ms. Dillard, why did you start the Next Gen Come Up and how does it operate?
Yeah.
Um,
So,
could I ask if is there any place that we can get like the full collection of poems?
yeah, I was gonna ask that too, actually.
Yeah, maybe Isabella, you could paste the link in the chat later on when so that folks could purchase your book.
Can't hear
Well,
anything.
the book isn't available for purchase, but it is, there's a PDF copy on the website. I can link all of that.
Thank you so much.
Very cool. I'm sorry, what was the question?
Why did you start the Next Gen Come Up and how does it operate?
Yes, so I was actually really into STEM before I discovered the world of politics. Since I was a little girl, I thought that I was going to grow up to be an environmentalist, and because of that, I threw myself into the STEM field. And once I got really invested in that, I started to realize like I'm often one of very few Black students, if Black girls, in these programs that sometimes had hundreds and hundreds of students. And I didn't really understand that because I had always grown up in a really diverse area and my family has always been very diverse. So I never really understood the aspect of being the only one racially. And so that's when I started to do my own research about politics. And that's when I started to, just get an overall sense of the bigger picture when it came to what the socioeconomic and political climate of our nation was like. And that's when I realized, like, I'm living in a generation that has lived to see the first Black president, but that's also living to see the murder of young Black boys like Trayvon Martin and the Mike Browns and the now Breonna Taylors and George Floyds. And I realized the polarity of the social spectrum that we were living in. And I just felt like I had to utilize the artsy side of my brain to bring awareness to that. And arts and writing arts, film, all of that stuff had always been, a passion of mine, but I never thought of it as being a part of my overall career until I discovered politics. And that's when I got involved in putting my foot forward and actually creating my own platforms for activism and to help other people in my community raise awareness. So I created the Next Gen Come Up originally as a strictly journalistic publication that would publish articles about social issues happening in our nation, like teenage dilemmas, Gen Z opinions, as well as events that were happening overseas, like the Sudan crisis that happened 2 or so years ago, and things of that nature. And then I realized that there was such a broader world when it came to politics and expressing those narratives to people. And I wanted to utilize more of my artistic and visionary talent to, incorporate art and utilize visionary imagery to inspire people to not only talk about issues, but to share their experiences through art. So that's how I got started.
Wow. That was amazing to hear. I'm really glad you tried to explore other parts of yourself and bring something really exciting to the world. Thank you. Um, okay, so next, sorry for mispronouncing Redefine, Miss Katie Jane. How does Redefine ensure justice and advocacy for all in your community?
Yeah. So basically, I'll just give a brief overview of like how Redefine functions. We have like 4 main branches. So I already talked a bit about our journalism, but we also publish resources and like educational content both on our website and our social media. We recently launched a podcast which also like discusses a lot of these issues. So like our first episode is talking about how to be an ally to the Black community. And then we also have campaigns and events. We're actually hosting an event this Friday that I think Anya might be speaking at, which is really exciting. And so that again is just going back to this idea of uplifting other voices, because like for me personally, I come from a lot of privilege and I'm not Black, and I would never want to co-opt those voices or that struggle, or speak for anyone. And so I think in that way, it's just about giving our platform to the people who can use it, and the people who need it, because we do have a pretty big platform. And then that brings me to like our last big thing, and that is our community. So we have chapters across the world. We have, I think, 10 chapters in America, 10 chapters internationally, and hundreds of representatives spread out throughout the world. And so we really want to use those voices and those chapters and this platform to uplift other voices and organizations that are doing a lot of really great grassroots work right now. We do try to do our own kind of direct action work. We hosted a mutual aid event at one point, but most of it is spreading awareness and uplifting narratives that maybe wouldn't have a chance to be told otherwise.
Thank you so much for sharing, Miss Katie, Jain. Next, I'm going to invite questions from all of you. And so you can forward your questions to me if you want to know something about our panelists before we go into our breakout room so that you can directly interact with them. So please forward all questions to me at this moment. When I was reading through your bio, I was really interested when I read that you held the largest you held the largest civil rights demonstration in your community, and I wanted to know how you think social media played a role in this, and how it can be used in like future demonstrations to ensure like peaceful and well organized demonstrations.
Absolutely. I think that social media had a huge part in all the events that took place from, since as early as Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery's death. I think that because we were still kind of trying to understand what the future was going to look like, and everyone was glued to their TVs and their phones, and we were all stuck inside, and it was still a really kind of weird time for everyone, because no one knew what to expect. No one really knew what was going on the outside. Everything was so uncertain. And I think that, at times like that, whether it's uncertainty on the level that we were experiencing it because of the pandemic, or whether it's uncertainty that comes straight from boredom that we experience every day, people always resort to their technology. And I think that, Black Lives Matter has been around for, a long, long time, over a decade. And the civil rights movement is something that has echoed over, many, many, many different generations. So it's not like the issues that we were fighting for in the summer of 2020 were new. However, I think that because people had no real other distraction or no kind of other deterrent from seeing it firsthand in a way that George Floyd's death did, I think that people really started to understand that the repetitiveness of this was what was angering most people. And that was why I think so many people outside of the Black community chose to, join the movement and chose to re-educate themselves, because it humanized the issue. And a lot of the protests and riots in some cases, as well as organizations like Antifa and the Black Lives Matter movement, who, are constantly preaching these narratives of Black power and of Black empowerment, were kind of militarized by the media. And so it was easy for other groups of people to just kind of not think about it and disassociate with, oh yeah, like I believe in human rights, but that's a lot for me. Like that's a little radical. I don't really want to like investigate or get into that. But I mean, seeing anyone in the position that we all saw George Floyd in will humanize any issue. And being that it was the Black Lives Matter movement that was so involved in that, I think that that's what brought a lot of people on board. And for me personally, I'm always very avid on social media, and I am one to always talk about the pros and cons of that. But usually, because I've been so invested in activism and in being, that empowering figure in my community, when it comes to these videos coming up, I'm always the first to go live, or the first to post something, or the first to like start something. And I remember the George Floyd situation was the first time that I really felt defeated by anything. And I think that because I was so used to like feeling the anger and being like, okay, I need to act, I need to act, I need to act, that I had never taken the time to really realize just how normal it was becoming for me to see these horrific things and then condense that emotion and then just push out like these efforts. And I realized like this is becoming normal, like this is, I'm becoming numb to it. And I think that that ultimately upset me more than even viewing the video did. And the video crushed me. But realizing that this was something that my community was becoming so accustomed to was terrifying for me to think about. And that was the first time I didn't go live immediately. I didn't post anything. I was just kind of trying to reevaluate and be like, wow, like this is the world that we're living in for real. Like are we making this our new normal? Is there like, what's the middle ground? And that was when a group of my peers came together to talk about just that, like how much the normalcy of these horrific events were dangerous to our generation and were harming us and our community. And that's when we came together and we decided to, spend the next 6 to 7 days planning a protest. And it still baffles me that we were even able to execute on the level that we did in just 6 days, because we were just pulling people together with the same efforts of like, we need to re-empower people, because everyone had really felt the weight of that. And we were like, we just need to do something. And we were like, oh, we're just gonna have about 500 people, because we were just calculating like, okay, our teachers, our friends, neighbors, families, like it'll be a nice group of people to just kind of spread the positivity and to re-empower everybody. And then I showed up ready to give my speech, and I was like, oh, 3,000 people, that's crazy. Social anxiety. But that was a really crazy experience for me, because although I'm a pretty confident person, I had never had to speak to that amount of people on the spot, because usually you mentally prepare for those kinds of things. And being so on autopilot and having to like kind of bulldoze through my fear to recognize that I'm here for a reason. I'm here to deliver a message. I'm here to re-empower my community. That was really powerful for me. And that really taught me not only a lot about my personal capabilities, but a lot about my community. The amount of people of all different backgrounds, races, age groups that came out to support our cause, to support us as a community. It really was really, really, really inspiring to me. And I had always kind of had, a fight for yourself, defend yourself, be your biggest ally kind of mindset, especially when it came to the Black Lives Matter movement. But seeing, such a huge, diverse pool of people come out and advocate for the fact that, no, these people don't deserve to be killed for things that these people are being killed for. Like, this is ridiculous. It really changed my outlook on allyship, as well as the vastness of the Black Lives Matter movement. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Ms. Dillard. Moving on to Ms. Hansen, I would like to know how you see your influence changing the world in the next 5 to 10 years. Are we going to see more competitions like the Imata arts competition, or do you have any more ideas to expand?
Well, I definitely see this contest going on for a few more years. I really just want to keep the contest going as long as it's needed, because at the end of 2020, there was the killing of Andre Hill, and that is what made me realize that this contest is like what's really needed. And it's giving people that, like I said before, the chance to speak about why Black Lives Matter and why Black lives shouldn't just be like taken at no expense. And I really just think that I'm just going to keep this contest going as long as it needs to.
What do you think is going to be like the effect on the larger community? What do you want to see changed in the society around you?
Well, I mean, I really want to see just action taken. Like, I know that especially when someone like a Black person is killed, maybe the cop is fired, but they can always just get another job. I really want to see like real, like cops facing real consequences, whereas not just getting fired where they can just go to the next town and get like another job. So I'm hoping that with this contest and just the whole Black Lives Matter movement, that people will finally realize that change needs to be done, and we will work towards that.
Thank you so much, and I hope your motivation gets you there, and we start seeing the change that we want to see. Um, Miss Katie Jane, I wanted to know what the biggest challenge you've encountered so far.
Yeah, so there have been a few. I'd say genuinely, during COVID, since we're made up of teenagers who have other things to do, right? Like we're going through school, we're still trying to help our families out. And so during COVID, we have seen a lot of people really struggle to continue their work at Redefine just because it isn't their top priority. It shouldn't be their top priority, and we want to be respectful of that. And so I would say over the past year, at least, our biggest challenge has just been losing some fabulous and dedicated members of our team who just couldn't afford to be a part of Redefine anymore. Redefine, we're a nonprofit organization. We don't have a ton of money, and so we can't yet afford to pay our employees. We're working on that. We're working on stipends, but we do realize that that is a block for a lot of people that we would love to join and whose voices we would love to hear. And so I would say the biggest challenge is just, being respectful of people's time while also encouraging them to share their voices and share their narratives.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad that you've come this far, regardless of all the obstacles that you've met. Ursula really wants to know, what do your classmates react? How do they react to your initiatives? How do they see your endeavors in the society? To all of you. I think Miss Katie, you can go first.
All right. Yeah, so I think there has been, like some resistance to Redefine just within my community from people who I wouldn't say don't really want to see change, but also just don't feel that action is necessary. And so that has been, definitely a part of it. But I would say the primary reaction is just like support. We've gotten people like within our community to join, and so like New Jersey is like a big hub for Redefine, I think, and so that has been really, really empowering. And when we talk about it with people, um, sometimes we gain new members, sometimes we gain new voices, and that's always fantastic. So Redefine generally, I think, has a pretty good impact, but also, yeah, there are, of course, some negatives, some drawbacks. We posted some resources about Black Lives Matter on our social media, um, and the responses were kind of appalling from some people. And so, of course, that's going to happen. Um, there are racists out there, but yeah, overall, I think we have received support and genuine people trying to help us.
I'm glad. Miss Dillard?
Yeah, I really identify with what Katie said. I remember after, well, not even just after the Black Lives Matter protest that I organized happened. Before that, I remember when we were organizing the effort and we were kind of in a scramble to like get everything together. I remember feeling so supported by my student community because the people who were, helping us put it together were all students and former students of West Orange High, which is where I go to school. And being able to have spoken alongside all of the Black student council presidents. I'm also the student council president of my school currently, and I'm the third Black female student council president to ever occupy the office of my school. And so to be able to speak alongside all of the Black student council presidents that had preceded me was something that I think really made a statement in my school community. And it showed that, even though we're from all different years from West Orange High, like we all came together to look at each other and be like, you're my equal. And, we're all fighting for the same thing. And I think that, having that kind of family aspect of it and still being in touch with those people to this day who are doing amazing things for the Black community and others around the world, I think that that really not only showed me, but showed my school community just how important unifying is, especially when it comes to fighting for human rights efforts. And after the Black Lives Matter protest, I remember my speech was sent back to me by someone. They were like, do you know that your speech has like 23,000 views on Facebook? And I was like, no. And so I remember going on Facebook and reading the comments. And it was kind of crazy because I'm radical in thought, but usually when it comes to talking to people with different political beliefs as me, I'm very diplomatic because I like hearing about other people's perspectives and I like seeing the bigger picture because it helps me better understand the issues that I'm passionate about. You know what I mean? So I'm not quick to like come back at people on social media or like even see so many racist comments because people know that I'm very diplomatic. And even though they may not agree with me, they know that I try to be, a team player on all sides and to just understand and listen to people, even if I don't agree with them. And it was crazy because I was seeing some like genuinely like hardcore racist comments that typically you see under like, actual political leaders posts that talk about this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, these people like are sending me like legitimate death threats and being like, you're a terrorist and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, wow, this is like legitimate political this is crazy. Like, I didn't know that was like, I didn't know I was capable of generating that. And I didn't know if it was a good or bad thing, but it kind of put into perspective, like, just how much a very humanitarian issue had so much negative pushback. And it was like, wow, like these people really don't understand. Because like, obviously you understand that racists are not open-minded people and that, in many aspects, racism and, bigotry is a sort of mental illness, really. It never really occurred to me that like the ignorance of it all is what weighs so heavy on so many other communities. And it's just like it's something that always mesmerizes me because it's not a hard Black Lives Matter is not a hard concept to grasp at all. It's like, just as easy as all lives matter is to grasp. Or if you were to say white lives matter is to grasp, because clearly those are things that are easy for the other side to grasp. But somehow when it comes to Black Lives Matter, this wall of ignorance is always put up and we always end up having to re-defend ourselves and re-explain. And it's this constant ongoing cycle. And it wasn't until I saw those comments that I really realized like, wow, some people take more than just protests and social media posts to educate about these things. Like these beliefs are really ingrained into a lot of Americans' mindsets, whether it be through their family or their, social history or whatever it may be. And that taught me a lot about just how hard it was going to be to make progress, trying to bulldoze through those perspectives while also still trying to remain diplomatic rather than defensive. So, yeah.
I'm really glad that you're pushing through amidst the obstacles. And yeah, I guess it's true. If people are opposing you, then it means that your initiative is ever more needed at this time. And I hope that you push through all the obstacles and then you end up affecting and changing people's minds about certain topics. And yeah. Okay, so Miss Hansen, the same question goes to you. How did your classmates and people around you feel about your initiatives?
So when I first began doing all of this, they didn't really know about it because it was quarantine and everything. So it was really just I was doing small articles and everything. And then I got on TV and I had an interview with Fox News. And last week, one of the teachers at my middle school like incorporated the video into one of their lessons. So then more teachers started hearing about it and were like emailing me. And then I had one of my teachers, like whole class, email me during my second period and was like, how can we get a copy? How can we enter? I was like, all right, guys, here's the link and everything. So my school definitely took it really well, or my middle school at least. When I'm back in person, I'm probably going to do more outreach to the students and work with my teachers about handing out flyers and everything and working with them. But a few students have like heard about my articles and reached out to me. So I really haven't been getting any negativity from my school, and I hope it stays that way.
I'm glad that your work is being propagated throughout your school and that more people are hearing about it. I think it's very important that people know about your good work, and I hope it motivates them to also come up with creative initiatives. Do you think the COVID situation last year, affected your initiative negatively or positively or in any way at all?
Well, the COVID quarantine really is what gave me the time to think about this whole initiative, but it also has been kind of negative because I haven't like there's so many events that could have been held, so many like things with people, but they aren't able to happen. And COVID is just a barrier kind of, but I worked around it by doing Zooms and everything. So I think I could have probably done more without COVID, but I've also gotten a lot done. So um, yeah, I guess that's how I feel about that.
That's nice. Ms. Dillard, do you think COVID affected your initiative?
Absolutely, 100%. Because I think that, you know, just like Isabella, there were so many things that I went into 2020 planning and like events and outreach efforts that required us to be in person. And I think that, you know, the whole shock of being sent home in early March and thinking like, oh, okay, well, hopefully like this doesn't last as long as everyone's kind of hyping it up to be. And now we're still here, you know, on Zoom, just like we are now. And I think that, you know, it really forced a lot of young change makers to reevaluate how they execute change efforts and how they continue to raise awareness, because a lot of the people that I looked up to, COVID kind of like put a wrench in their whole activism sphere of work. And I think that it also kind of helped wean out the performative activists in the space, because I think that a lot of people kind of not used it as an excuse because, you know, everyone goes through things, especially in times of crisis. But, you know, posting on social media is not activism in itself. Like you have to really put your creativity and your innovation to the test when it comes to not being able to do outreach in person or not being able to, you know, have boots on the ground from everywhere. So I think that, you know, that really kind of helped wean out who was really, really serious about still pushing forth their agendas of change, and helping people even in this time. And for the next gen come up personally, it was challenging not only because of COVID, because a lot of the things that we do or are trying to do now are very media based, and we're trying to incorporate more creative writing and artistic display in our platform. But you know, the outreach efforts that we were going to incorporate were, you know, forced to be reevaluated and rethought out. We were going to have a Breonna Taylor protest, and then the COVID numbers in our area skyrocketed. We were like, that is no longer on the table. So we had to have like virtual events and panels and virtual art showcases and things of that nature, as well as social media giveaways and like campaigns that were, you know, as minimal but maximum as they could be with the resources that we had. And I think that, you know, things like that really forced us to be more creative, but also expand, you know, how we looked at outreach in general. So even when COVID is dead and gone, and when we're all back to being, you know, in person and talking to one another and all of that, I think that COVID has kind of opened a lot of doors for us creatively, and has shown us what we're capable of organizing, even when, you know, resources are scarce. So, yeah.
Yeah, I also like I agree with what you're saying about the social media thing because I know when a lot of the protests started, people were just like, reposting stories or like posting like an image, but really reaching out and doing work is I think what really makes the big impact. So I'm hoping that like when I go back to school and everything and when COVID is gone, I guess that I'll be able to do more of that in person.
I'm glad that you took you didn't let COVID stop you, and then you became like more creative from that, and that's very inspiring to hear about. Miss Jane, did COVID affect your activities, and how did you like how did it affect your activities?
Yeah, it definitely did. So Redefine operates virtually anyway. So in that way, we were really lucky and that we could still, maintain contact with our entire network. But like I said before, there were people who no longer had like the ability because they needed to help out at their family with their family stores and, like help out literally just paying their bills. And so I think in that way, it definitely impacted our team and our team dynamics. And then also, like Anya said, like we had planned events. We try to host like a big campaign once a year, and we were forced to completely change route with that. And so I think in that way it definitely impacted like what we were planning on doing and what we were doing. But in other ways, I do think that people moving virtually helped us plan like more smaller events, I guess. So like via Zoom, like Zoom webinars and panels like this, I think were facilitated just by like our growth and understanding about how to do them and how they work. So in that way, again, I think we are lucky that we had the resources to do that. But of course, I think our team dynamic definitely changed somewhat. Some of us did become closer because we're going through this together, and that's always something that unites people, which was fantastic. But I wouldn't say it was by any means worth the struggle that it put us and everyone else through.
Okay, we have Mr. Victor joining us from Ghana. He had some issues with his internet, but he's with us now. He's a projects coordinator for Youth for Human Rights International, and he brings human rights to life in Ghana. He also works with World Youth Alliance Africa, and he's a certified trainer on advocacy and human dignity. Welcome, Mr. Campbell, and could you give us some more insights about your activities?
Hello. Please, can you hear me, please?
Yes, please.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Campbell.
Yes, please. Sorry, I came a bit late. My apology. Hello.
Hello, sir.
Yes, can you hear me, please?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, please. I came late due to some challenges, so my apology for that, please.
Yeah, no problem. We wanted to know about some of your activities in Ghana and how the activism landscape looks here for social and racial like activism.
Yes, thank you very much. I really appreciate the question. Also, thank you guys for allowing me to be part of this panel. It's a honor, really. I do appreciate it. And I hope to learn a lot from others, colleagues also, and to share my experience of what I've learned in the past with each other here. In Ghana, here to be specific, racial injustice or social injustice within youth is is a bit moderate sometimes because when it comes to youth activism, youth are not that much involved into activism. Why? Because of like there is no motivation from, will I say, the public sector or the government to motivate them, like be inclusive in what they are supposed to do. But we as World Youth Alliance, WYA Africa to be specific, we have our head office, our regional head office in Kenya. We work with youth to train them about their dignity, how they matter in society, their right and what they are supposed to know, what they're supposed to do. Because we are in a continent whereby I won't say like our rights is being marginalized or is being taken for granted. But to be specific, as an African, there is a lot we must have to do when it comes to justice. Because when I saw the topic racial injustice, I thought about the second one as wow, is it due on race or color or ethnicity or background? Because when you're talking about race, I think it's far way different from where you're coming from. I hope I'm making myself clear, please. Good.
Yes, sir.
People take always advantage of you being white or black or Hispanic or African as race. I think the idea of we Africans or we black being submissive to different type of race, we think they are more than or like being respect more than us. There's been like a clue that we have to enlighten ourselves to know that we can't fight for equality, but at least we must know that there is dignity in us as youth, and our voice need to be heard outside there. When I face work on assignment for Human Rights, Youth for Human Rights International, We try to reach out to youth, a juvenile youth to be specific, and praise him. And we heard from them their stories, 18 years, 17 years, 25 years. You have been sentenced like 2 years, 3 years in prison. After then, you coming out after prison, what is life for you outside there? Stigmatization, community will not embrace you. Why? Because they will say that like something is against you, a criminal, you have been convicted. So we need a safe place for youth to think positive, to bring changes, to contribute to nation building. When we are talking about race injustice or social injustice, it's beyond what we are seeing. Because I'm white, so I need or I am supposed to have more privilege than the black, or because I'm an African American, I am supposed to have more privilege than the black. That's not really justice or injustice is trying to portray. I believe justice or injustice is trying to point out the contribution each body have to make in a society. Because if I can still reference to Nelson Mandela, one of the most iconic leader, you must know that he was never going there for us to be equally yoked together. But he was trying to make things know that yes, we matter. And then whatever we are about doing also need to be recognized for what we are doing. If we are black or if we are white, if we are youth, our youthfulness needs to be recognized as youth. And whatever we are doing as youth need to be seen and need to be respected. Because the founder of World Youth Alliance, 1999, was a member at United Nations. He was called there to represent youth. And then he came up with the Dignity platform. At the end of it, in 2001, we launched the Human Dignity Curriculum. This curriculum teaches children from age 6 up to 12 their basic rights from home to school. Because we learn that in Africa, as for example, from home, you see child abuse. Parents, guardians are abusing children at a younger age. So how will you address this issue? Or you are waiting for them to be youth before you start advocating for them. So sometimes a lot happens. But because it's not being portrayed outside there, the big picture, we're not looking into it. We are looking into what social media showing every day. But when you go down to the grassroots, go down there below there and see what is happening, you may learn that youth are really suffering and we are really struggling.
Thank you so much, Mr. Victor. We're glad that you could join us at this moment. Just before we end the call, we're going to go into breakout rooms so that the participants could have a one-on-one chat with the panelists. I know Ursula has a lot of questions, and I'm sorry that I couldn't ask a lot of them. I hope going into the breakout rooms will. Okay, so I can go ahead with Ursula's questions. Amazing. Um, okay, so Ursula wants to know what is the hardest part of starting an NGO, and what advice would you have for someone who, like a change maker who wants to start an initiative to address a social problem?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I don't know specifically where she wants to start the NGO. In Africa, Asia, in America, in Europe, I don't know specifically. But in Africa here, starting an NGO is always a bit difficult because, for example, if you are advocating NGO, advocating for rights of maybe children's rights, women's rights, LGBT whatsoever, there's always a fight with you and government agencies. Why? Because they may think that as an NGO, you must try to push or advertise their interest, like working with them 50-50. In the sense that you can't come against them, neither won't you prosecute them. For example, if you're advocating for education, better education, example SDG Good 4. So the government will tell you that you can't go on air and like say anything bad about them. Like they are not sponsoring, they're not spending more in education. Those things, you always find it difficult. So the first thing you must do, you must be ready and well prepared to come against these people whenever they call you to declare yourself. This is the first thing you must do. Be decisive. Whatever comes, I'm ready to stand for it. Yes, because for example here, during the COVID-19 now here in Ghana to be specific, we have schools without PPE. And then before then last month, the President of Ghana, His Excellency, announced that he himself and his government is going to prepare and supply all schools with PPEs. So you see those things. And then parents have to buy face masks for themselves, for their children, sanitizer, and all these things every day. So if an NGO advocating for education specifically come out and try to criticize the president or the government by saying that you promised this, but you never keep up to it, they will try to shut it down as an NGO. So these are some of the challenges you are facing. For example, social distances. Now we are saying that schools need to observe social distances. In Ghana to be specific, that is not the case. You still have children bunched in classes. Why? Because the government never invested in good infrastructure development for schools. There are not enough school buildings. So if an NGO advocating for education come out and try to criticize the government and this part, like you can't say this, you can't do this, you will be hunted down. So sometimes it's difficult to start an NGO in Africa here to be specific. I don't know about the West per se. I'm saying about Africa here. Because
Okay,
you know,
yeah,
yes.
thank you so much, Mr. Campbell. I think most times it's a bit hard to go against the local and national government when you're starting an NGO. Ms. Dillard, would you want to share some difficulties in starting an NGO and any advice you would have for a change maker from an American perspective?
Sure. So one of my biggest challenges was having the confidence to start, because politics isn't always something that is viewed as such a friendly topic, or that something that everyone can be a part of. And I think that because a lot of people are worried about saying the wrong thing, or worried about, putting off the wrong vibe, or, making someone feel offended. I think that's the reason why a lot of people choose to sway away from anything that is, remotely politically or socially sound. But I think that, learning to be confident in yourself, and learning to, be confident in standing in your truth, and, having an opinion and sharing that opinion, whether you're the only person in the room with an opinion, or whether you're in a room with a lot of people with contrasting opinions, it's important to, recognize the power in your voice and the power in your presence. And, having that confidence is what will ensure that the people around you see that and want to be a part of that. Another hard part about particularly being an organizer, I think that, very similar to what Victor said, you're forced to kind of accept the radical side of being progressive, or of fighting for social change. And if you're non-confrontational, that may not be something that you want to gear your organization towards. Because if you've ever organized a protest, if you've ever organized a community outreach effort, even if it's something that is not in direct confrontation of law enforcement or of any political figures in your town, if you've organized anything that's remotely, for humanities based, then the police in your area know who you are. And that's like a very strange thing to say, but American municipalities are very keen to young activists, because they know how much sway we have in our communities and how much influence we have. And they do kind of keep tabs on everyone, which can give some people anxiety. But I think that, it's all in the name of the game. And whether you have a nonprofit, whether you're a community organizer, whether you just do a lot of community service work, or if you want to combine all three of those and incorporate, your talent into a platform the way that I did and the way that Katie did, and Isabella did. I think it's really important to overall just be very confident in yourself. Don't let anything scare you out of being an advocate, because realistically, it's one of the most influential things that you can be in this day and age, regardless of what, your career interest is. I think it's super important to be so forthright at such a young age and show people that it doesn't matter how long I've been around on this planet. Like, I can still prove to you that, I'm firm about something and I believe in something. And I think that that's really powerful. And I think that, that's what should always be at the forefront of your mind if you want to start an organization, because that's what will keep you honest with yourself, and that's what will hold you accountable. And it's also what will motivate you every day to put your best foot forward and to really advocate for the issues that you're talking about and are passionate about. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Dillard and Mr. Campbell. I think one important or one major thing hindering activism is the government you're in, and I guess it's very important to know what you want to expect from society. You want to, like, the vision you have for how your initiative is going to affect society. Because I think back in China, a friend of mine told me how he went to another community and then he wanted to do some research and get in touch with the local people. And then every step of the way, he had a government official like speaking over his shoulder saying, you can't add that, you need to delete that, you can't go and tell the central government about this. And in the end, he was crippled and he couldn't get the narratives of the people out there because he was being censored. So I think if you want to be an activist, you need to be ready to meet a lot of opposition. And as Anya said, you need to know what you want in the end, and that is going to motivate you and push you forward. Okay, so we have a question for Isabella here. Isabella, I saw you on the TV. How did it feel to be on Nickelodeon? How did it help you? Do you have more entries this year?
Hi. Well, it was crazy because okay, so I did an Imatter like event and I had some of the poets who were nearby present their poems, and Nickelodeon sent a film crew to the event, and it was really cool. And I didn't see the segment until like the day of on December 4th, and I was like, because Billie Eilish said my name as an introduction, and I was just thinking, like, I didn't think any of this would lead to that. So, um, that was definitely like crazy. And I had about 100 and 125 entries last year. And so far for this year, I've received 75, and the contest is not over until July. So I don't know, but I hope I mean, I might pass that, and I'm hoping that I will reach all 50 states.
Thank you
Oh,
so
and there's a
much.
question. Nickelodeon is a like TV channel thing, and they were doing a Kid of the Year contest, and I got nominated. I was a finalist.
Nice. Thank you so much, Melania, for the question. I'm sifting through some of the questions right now. Do you think society will be more polarized in the future? I guess in terms of ideologies. Um, Miss Katie, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say almost definitely we seem to be in this place of political polarization. And I think one of the main issues behind that is just this idea that everything is moral. And so, like, when you call someone a racist, that becomes a moral insult, and that brings up defensiveness, that brings up, kind of like, oh no, I'm not, like, how dare you. And like, I've experienced that, like, with other people so many times. And so I think that since everything is becoming much more personal, which I think in some ways is a really good thing, just because there are issues that are personal and should be personal and should have emotion attached to them, I think that that's leading to people being it's making it difficult for people to communicate with each other, and people who come from different backgrounds to communicate with each other. And I think that yeah, is leading to a lot of polarization. So I guess at Redefine, something that we did a couple of years ago was the hashtag Burst Your Bubble campaign, where basically we were just asking people to go up. This is pre-COVID, of course, so we were asking people to go up and have conversations with strangers. They would end the conversation by like blowing bubbles and like bursting them with their fingers, which is a little weird, but overall it was to ask them to burst their bubble to talk to other people, because there definitely is also this sense with polarization of you kind of being trapped in your own ideas and your own mentalities, your own echo chambers, and that of course only furthers the polarization, the lack of communication. And so yeah, so that was just something that we did to try to empower people and try to get people to go a little bit beyond maybe what they're comfortable talking about. But obviously there are also extents to that. We don't want anyone to engage in a conversation that puts them in danger, like even verbally. If I would never want someone to talk to someone who is saying like hate speech, that kind of thing. So there's always that line between what is political polarization, what is a lack of communication, and what is, you just trying to stay safe and make sure that like you're doing okay for your own mental health. So that's like another factor, I guess.
Thank you so much for sharing, Katie. I think it's important that we give avenues and initiates people to have conversations, because it leads to sharing of narratives and experiences, and then I think it creates better understanding among people. Um, okay, so this is the time for the panelists to brag about that one thing that they feel really accomplished about. And so my next question is going to ask them to tell us, what do you think their one most important accomplishment is? Let's start with Mr. Campbell. Mr. Campbell, are you still with us? I think he's on mute. Let me see. Okay, Isabella, you could go first. Let me try to tell Mr. Campbell to unmute.
Oh, oh, he's here, I think.
Then you carry on. Ladies first. I'll give you the phone.
Okay, thank you. I don't really know. I think that being a part of an effort so as huge as the protest that I was a part of organizing and speaking at may be one of my proudest accomplishments for sure. Because obviously, like, accolades are cool, and being able to say, like, yeah, I was in Elle magazine, that's like, a cool thing to say. But in terms of really playing to my passion and my purpose and solidifying like what I think it means to be a leader, I think that being able to show myself that of creating that level of impact and influence in my town, and being able to, organize an effort that ultimately played a huge part in our police chief and our mayor ordinances related to, racial discrimination in schools and the lack of funding that, predominantly Black elementary schools was receiving, and all these different things. I think that really solidified, why I fell in love with doing this work and why I dedicated so much of my life to it. And being able to unite people in the way that I organizing my town's first Juneteenth celebration, that was also really huge for me, because, fighting can get tiring and it can get depressing, and it can, become a discouraging battle of not really knowing how many people are on your side, not knowing how many people really want to see the movement succeed, and all of these different things. And I think that, being able to pull so many people together and, in joy and in optimism and celebration in the midst of all that, in the same spirit, proved to me that I'm capable of uniting and mobilizing people. And I think that, while that's something I always told myself, seeing it in motion and seeing it in front of my eyes really, really brought me the confidence and the inspiration that I needed to solidify just how much I wanted to do the work that I was doing.
Thank you so much for sharing. Mr. Campbell, your biggest accomplishment as an activist, please.
Thank you very much. the accomplishment still continues because as an activist, you don't go tire. Like it's a daily activism because we are living in a place where they think that wisdom is only for the aged. Like if you are within 18 to 25, at most 30, you don't think right. So there are some things they won't give you. There are some positions you won't have it. There are some places you will not talk. If you want to accomplish as an advocate, meaning you don't relax, you become really resilient. So for me per se, I can't say I've accomplished as of now, but I'm still working towards it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Miss Katie?
Um, so I would say mine is probably like a bit smaller. I talking about Redefine still, of course. I used to be the director of journalism at Redefine. I would say my biggest accomplishment probably came through that when we started to implement like systems of organization that allowed us to publish articles pretty much every single day. I think that was a huge expansion from what we had been doing previously at maybe one or two a week. And so I think expanding that, getting so many new members of the journalism team, um, and yeah, just like being able to like meet them and talk to them and publish their work in a place where like I could see that it was being read, our viewership was going up, all of that I think was really impactful for me and I really loved that feeling. So that would probably be my like proudest moment.
Thank you so much for sharing. Miss Hansen, what do you think is your biggest accomplishment thus far?
I think that my biggest accomplishment was probably the book I showed you. I'm really proud of how it turned out, and also the event last year, and just being on Nickelodeon because I know everyone dreams of like, being on it, but I never thought that could happen from a project like this. So those would both have to be my biggest accomplishments.
This is so wonderful to hear from our panelists today. One thing that resonates across all panelists is the spirit of humility, and I like how they're always speaking about the community and what they seek for the community and how they think that their community can help in that. I think that is very important that you have that attitude of humility, and I am just excited at seeing people like you in our generation, and I know that it's going to be very amazing to see the future with all of you. Um, One last question before we go: if anyone has any advice for people in the Change Makeup project, anything that they think might help them achieve more due to your experiences, please feel free to share with us. If there's that one thing that you would want to resonate among other change makers who would want to take up initiatives like you and follow your footsteps, what is that one or two things that you would want to tell them that they should like follow or stick to or have?
I can go, I think. So, the biggest thing I would say is just listen to other people. So, if you're leading an organization, then, it's easy to feel like the top dog, like your opinion matters most, but that's never really the case. Your organization's built up from the ground up, it's built of the people who are working on it. And in so many ways, understanding those different perspectives, where those people are coming from, what they want to advocate for is just so, so important for actually making any real change. And so listening to other people and making sure that your system of leadership facilitates ways for people to speak out and um, empower themselves, I think is probably the biggest thing that I've learned doing this. But yeah.
Um, is there anyone else who would want to add to that?
Yes. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Kondo. Any advice for any youth who's coming up in being an activist? Any advice for them?
Yeah, the advice continues. Don't watch back. Stay focused. Aim at your goal. Have an objective. Because if yes, we can, is a global slogan that changed everything. For how many years? I believe a long walk to freedom also can still stand out there. So as an activist, you must know that there's a prize for you ahead of you, and you're fighting for this thing. Maybe after 10 years, 25 years, you want to achieve it. So no matter what you may face at the beginning or at the middle of it, there must be a breakthrough. So one of the things we must know that as leaders, whatever organization we are leading, there must be a need of an autocratic leader sometimes, a dictator leader, or laissez-faire leader. But you must know that as a leader, your duty is for you to build other leaders after you. So if you are working in activist, if you are working as an activist, wherever you may find yourself, know that you have a mandate to like reproduce people just like you. People who can stand even when you're not there. People who can take the mantle after you. Remember, Jesus made 12. After 2,000 years, the message is still going. I always say that this is one of the biggest activism I'm always referring to. So we have to stand when, even if come hell, come killing, whatever it may come, we must stand. If a man stands for 27 years in prison, why won't we do it? So sometimes fear and troubling try to push us aside, away from the goal, away from the vision. But we must know that if one perish, whole of we will perish. So we must know that one needs to die for others to enjoy, or one needs to stand for others to stand, or one needs to sacrifice for others to have the benefit of all. So my advice to fellow change makers or activists is for them to keep their eyes on the goal. The prize is there, no matter what. Even if it causes you to go through prison, humiliation, setback, victimization, is still needed. There's still a price you need to pay for it. I think I'm making some sense. I don't want to take the time too
Yeah.
much.
Yes. This is really awesome.
Oh,
Um, okay,
yeah.
so Annalise is preparing the breakout rooms, and I think the advice is clear. As change makers, we need to stay focused. We need to be humble, listen to people, and also, I guess, have respect and be super resilient because it isn't easy to like achieve a lot, and we need to prepare the route for other people to follow up again after us. Okay, so I think Annalise is preparing the breakout rooms now, and very soon you have the chance to directly ask any other questions that you may have to the panelists. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you so much to all of our panelists. Let's maybe unmute and give everybody a hand. If you can unmute your mics and just give a hand to all of our incredible panelists and to Peter. Thank you so much, Peter.
Well done.
Congratulations.
Thank you
Wonderful.
so much.
So, gosh, I'm just so inspired by everything that we heard today.
Why? Unmute.
I hope that all of you are as well. So now we'll just have 10 minutes in breakout rooms. I put one speaker in each room, so you can just ask away any questions you have about how to be an amazing activist. Learn from these folks for the next 10 minutes, and then we'll come back together and close.